Hello and welcome to another episode of Wannabe Entrepreneur. Today I have another interview for you. I have Derrick Michaud with me today. Hey Derrick, how's it going? Everything good?
It's going well, Tiago. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I'm very excited about this interview because I really believe that I will learn a lot with you. Derrick is a musician. He also has his own company, Shelby Row Productions, that helps other podcasters set up their podcast and edit their sounds. He has a YouTube channel, and I'm super excited because I know that I will learn a lot from you. And and of course, I also forgot that you also have your own podcast, the Podlogics, right?
Correct. Yes.
Cool. So I even have to confess that I'm a little bit nervous because I feel that I'm really talking here with a professional. Uh,
Oh no, man. We're all friends here. No,
yeah,
nothing to be afraid of.
yeah. So I would like to to start by asking you to introduce yourself to the listeners, Derrick, if you don't mind.
Sure. So my name is Derrick Michaud, like you mentioned. I do live in the States. I'm from the state of Maine, but now I live in the Memphis, Tennessee area. And yeah, as you mentioned, for the last 20 years or so, I've been a touring musician and did that for a while, among all kinds of other side hustles, which we can definitely dig into as far as the world of entrepreneurship when it comes to having to have five different hustles in order to pay your bills.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I have a daughter. She's 13. Her name is Skylar. And I work from home and with my new business that's been in operation now for a couple years. And yeah, that's a quick summary of kind of what I'm about.
What is your background? So, did you study like sound engineering, or did you study music? What is your background?
So the music thing started when I was 12, 13. Um
Wow.
and but it was a little high school band here and there, it wasn't taking things too seriously. But it got me interested in equipment. So when I went into my senior year of high school, there was a course called media technology, and it was more for radio and television production. But I
Hmm.
just knew that this would be an opportunity to be in a classroom where I could push buttons and push faders and record audio, whether it's music or not. I just wanted to get my hands on some sound equipment. I was just interested in that. And maybe 2 weeks into the class, the teacher announces that there was an opening in a radio station group in a city just north of where I grew up, and if anyone was interested in interviewing. And I raised my hand immediately. It was for like an AM radio station, all talk kind of radio station, and it was a very very simple entry level position where I was basically just playing commercials for the radio market. Very easy, but it got me started into a radio career that was off and on for me for about 10 years. Fast forward to when I started the podcasting deal in 2018, I was able to tap back into my radio days. And then, like I mentioned, but starting year 2000, 2001 is when I started taking music very seriously. And that became my number one hustle that controlled my life for 20 years.
How is it to live as a musician in the US? Is it as hard as here in Europe? It's is or do you know a lot of people that are able to have a steady paycheck and a steady job as musicians? How is this?
So, it all depends on where you live. If you live in Nashville, Tennessee, and you break into the circles down there and play downtown, you can make some good money. Also, that's where a lot of the major touring comes from. You know,
Right.
you hook up with even a medium rate country artist that has a good booking agent. They go out every weekend and play big clubs or festivals. Well, that's all based in Nashville. You hook up with
Mhm.
a good band, you meet up on a Thursday night, get in the tour bus, come back, go do your thing, come back Sunday. If you can get to the higher scale jobs like that, you're doing good.
But is it originals or is it covers? Cover bands?
Often, if you're playing with a major label artist or a mid-level artist, it's mostly originals.
Okay.
But the majority of work is you're gonna have to learn to play a lot of covers. The other big avenue for musicians is casinos. Back in late 90s, early 2000s, it was the kind of job to get. And I was very fortunate to come in to that world in 2006 for about 4 years. And that was when I didn't need any other hustle work. That was the one period where it was a full-time job. You go to a casino, you set up, and they hire you to play 5 nights. Okay?
Okay.
And then you do your job, you do your contract. Your last night to play is Saturday. You leave Sunday to the next casino, and then you
Right.
just do that week after week after week for 4 years or so. I was gone each year for 45 to 50 weeks out of the year, but living in casinos, which can bring its own adventures. But it's tough. It's who there's luck, there's circumstance, and it's fleeting. You finally find something that pays good, and then sure enough, there's always something that happens 6-7 months down the road where the singer decides to slow down or quit altogether, or something happens. So then
Right.
you're always searching. It's always a hustle.
Yeah. So what I know about that is, so I come from a country that is a very small country, which is Portugal, and I have a couple of friends trying to make it as musicians, and if they want to make as the original, so have their own original music, it's very hard. It's
It's
very
harder.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, you can start making money professionally as a cover band, no
Yeah.
problem.
Is it the same though? Is it something that, for in your case, what do you prefer? Like playing music that everyone loves and already knows, or creating your own?
So, that's a fun question because I'm a bass player. I forgot to mention that, and
Yeah.
why I highlight that is I am a typical bass player like myself is a hired gun, as we're called. You want to hire me to provide you a service as a bass player? Okay, you send me the song list. When am I getting paid?
Yeah.
you know, um, I've never really been in a position where I was in an original band part of the writing. I've been in plenty of bands that did originals, but for me, it was like learning a cover song. It was someone
Yeah.
else's music, and I was just getting paid to play it. But in terms of ease, if you're wanting to be an all original band, you are climbing a very steep, long hill,
Yeah.
and you're going to have to understand you're going to be working for free for a long time. Now, here's the thing, just like business, you got risk and you got reward. If you start a cover band, the risk is low, the work is there, but there is a ceiling. You're just
Yeah.
going to make $100 to $150 a man US, right? If you're an original band, you believe in yourself, just like you're starting your own business, and you gamble on yourself, you commit no matter how painful it may be, no matter how much debt you're putting yourself into. If it works, then the reward is limitless. And so the Rolling Stones didn't get huge for playing covers. They got huge because they gambled on themselves and decided, you know what, we're going to write our own music.
I mean, it's already so hard to make it, to have a steady job as a, cover artist. So if you're trying to do it as, original band, I guess it's even harder.
It is, yeah, it
Yeah.
is. But if you're good,
The reward
then
is it's sweet, right? It's really nice.
yes, yes, very much so.
And one question that I also have for you, which is, so after, years in this industry, I guess you had your fun, and it must have been also quite cool and interesting and fun, but very tiring, right? Like it's hard to have a family if you're always traveling around, right? So is that the reason why you decided to do something different, to create your own business?
No, this all kind of just happened by circumstance. Let me say that clearer for you. The podcast thing that I started was just another side hustle. It
Right.
was another thing that I could add to the list of other hustles that I was piling together for sake of being able to be a touring musician. Because what makes it hard to be a touring musician is not only do you need supplemental income, but you need flexibility. You might be on the road for a month, times are good, but then you have a few weeks off, times are slim, so you
Hmm.
need to pick up work. Well, you can't just work at a retail store and say, look, I'm going to be gone for a month, I'll see you when I get back. You need flexible work that can wrap around it. So I discovered a website called Upwork. I'm
Hmm.
not sure if you're familiar, but
Yeah.
it was I just Googled one day work from home, freelance work or whatever. I was looking for another thing. Came across Upwork, and at first I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to try to learn how to code, or I can find some kind of administrative work in here. But then just randomly I saw something in the job feed for editing a podcast. Wow, that's interesting.
I can do that.
Yeah, then I just went to the search engine and I was like podcast editing, and I couldn't believe the amount of need there was. I had no idea it was going to be what it became. So but I look back on it, that's when everything changed for me,
Yeah.
because I could do it, but it was another hustle. But like, all right, let's try to get a client. Let's try to get
Yeah.
two clients. It gave me that flexibility. I could work from home. Now I'm in control of my fate. I'm not just a
Yeah.
hired gun for a band, and I'm passionate about it. I lost my passion in playing music many years ago, because you start playing the same 100 songs over and
Yeah.
over and over
What
and
was the
over.
song that you played the most? You
Sweet Home
know?
Alabama.
Yeah.
There's another song called Wagon Wheel. There's there's yeah, you get your standards and you kind of
Yeah.
go into autopilot, and you can just play and not even realize you're playing it. But
Right.
um
Autopilot mode.
autopilot mode, yes, for sure. Another factor is I quit drinking in 2014, so you can imagine being on the road, and a non-drinker
Wow. Yeah.
can be difficult too.
I cannot
So
imagine. Yes.
yeah,
Because as an
so
artist, right, as an entertainer, you are always expected to, bring a certain vibe or bring a certain
mhm.
energy. And even though everyone says, you don't need alcohol to have fun, I mean, you need it to reach that level of excitement most of
it,
the times, right? So how
oh
can you
yeah,
keep up
it,
without it? It's very
it's
hard.
like liquid adrenaline.
Yeah.
It puts you in that place. It puts you in. Now you're along with the audience. They're drinking, you're drinking, and that's the other thing. You're allowed to drink on the job. You don't have any boundaries. You got bartenders delivering you shots of whiskey or
Yeah.
tequila or whatever.
And if you
Uh,
don't accept it, they will take it. They might take it
yep,
in the wrong way, right?
yep. And I had to nip that in the bud real quick. I
Yeah.
quickly had to be like, don't feel bad about this. And if someone wants to give you grief over it, whatever. And quickly just got a lot of confidence in it. I'm like, no one's gonna persuade me to drink if I really mean it to not drink.
Yeah.
But the whole room around you gets drunk, and that's the difficulty. It's not the urge uh, of wanting to drink because you're around alcohol. It's having to be sober, the only sober person in a
Exactly.
room of 100 drunk people. Uh,
It's
that's
very hard. It's very
it's
hard.
very hard. Yeah, but I got used to it.
Yeah, yeah, I was also thinking when you're talking about you having multiple side hustles, how is it like? Because I'm also trying not to live out of my projects, and I was lucky enough to have some money on the side from my job previously,
Mhm.
but it's it's kind of nerve wracking thinking, okay, I need to make money to live. Was it a constant stress for you, or did you just get used to that?
It became normal, but it didn't make it any less stressful. Things are good, but all of a sudden, oh man, I need new tires on my car.
Yeah,
You get this big blast of need, and then it's credit card.
yeah,
And
hmm,
my credit card debt was life. I was not the guy to, oh man, I got a new credit card and buy $1,000 television.
yeah,
The most of my debt is because of, oh, my car broke down, I need $1,000.
yeah.
Um, so that's where it gets stressful, and that's when sometimes you just feel defeated. 'Cause just
Hmm.
when things are gotten going smooth, then another thing comes in,
Yeah,
because the margins are so thin that you don't have wiggle room for any kind of
you cannot
life
save. Hmm.
coming in. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely must be hard. So I guess that in the back of your mind, you're always trying to find for that side hustle that would catch fire. And it's funny because I don't know, when you're working in your first radio gig back in the days, internet and streaming was coming along, and I don't know, for some reason I also thought that radio would die.
Hmm.
uh, but now podcasts are coming, and podcast is basically radio somehow. Instead of being live, it's not live radio, but it's the audio format. Did you ever think that this would be possible, that the audio format would come with such a strength?
Well, before thinking of podcasting, it was no surprise to me that radio started dying out. Radio didn't die out because of podcasting. Radio died out because of radio. The way they the way they started structuring major conglomerates, piecing all the radio stations together in one big company and watering it down. Everything's pre-recorded now. That they don't give disc jockeys any space to bring personality. It's just very cookie cutter. You listen to the pop station, you got the same 20 songs all day, every day.
Yeah.
So that they were already shooting themselves in the foot. Now podcasting started really ramping up, I would say, in late 2011, 12. It's been around since before then, but we can look back on when Joe Rogan kind of started. He was
Yeah.
a pioneer because it wasn't really kind of known as podcasting. It was just, hey, I'm going to sit down with my buddies, we're going to roll some video and audio, record it, and post it on YouTube or
Yeah.
something. Just kind of throw it out there. But I feel like the reason why podcasting has become what it is it's on demand. It's very accessible to listen to, but it's accessible to do it. Like
Right.
you
Yeah.
can at the lowest budget. If you really wanted a podcast, you can.
Yeah.
If you didn't want all the bells and whistles and you didn't want higher end editing, you can literally just record yourself, get an Anchor account, and blast it out there, or get a
That's
quick,
exactly what I did. That's exactly
yeah,
what I did.
get a YouTube channel and just go and start.
Yeah.
So, and then use it as a marketing tool for your business. And that's why then when businesses really started catching on to the kind of reach and the way you can repurpose a podcast audio and video and make it snippets for Instagram, or just using it as a way to market their brand or business, that's when things really took off.
So let's get back to your business then. You said that you're first using this freelancing website. Now I forget the name. What is it? Top no.
Upwork.
Upwork, right? And you started using it, and it was it caught fire, right? So I guess you were editing a lot of material every day. And
Yes.
how did things evolve then?
So the first, let's see, I got my first client in January of 2018. It takes 6 months to finally get a few, but getting that first one is nice because now you have more resume, you have some experience. And then that's when things started rolling for like a year or so. I was getting busier and busier. I still needed other side hustles, but this was definitely starting to build into something that I could grab onto.
What would you do then? What tasks would you do for these clients? Just editing their podcast or more?
Great question. And that definitely ties into why I started an agency. Yes, all I was doing was editing. There was two factors. A, I was getting busy enough where I realized I can only edit so much in a week.
Yeah.
I saw my earning potential being capped. I'm like, unless I can always up my hourly rate, there's going to be a ceiling here. By this time, I've heard a lot of clients asking, can you do the show notes? Can you do episode cards? Can you do our cover art? And I had to say no to a lot of those things, and it cost me clients. It was early summer of 19 is when I realized I need to rethink this thing. I can either keep trudging along in the mud, or let's change the mindset and think I need to be a business.
Before we continue, there I still have a question from your editing days, and this is more an expertise
Sure.
question. So
Sure.
what are the main things that you would edit in the podcast, or what are the main
Mhm.
attributes for a great, good sounding episodes?
What I've learned is filler words is really big thing. We call it scrubbing.
Right.
So let's take this episode for example. And if I was your editor and I'm listening through, and then I hear myself go
Yeah.
those filler words get old and tiring, and I'm the worst. I'm the worst at delivering filler words, but a lot of people want that out. So there's the scrub editing where you're just going through and taking out all of those blemishes, if you will. Some clients want certain pieces of content taken out, and then of course tacking on the intro and outro. So as far as editing, that's pretty much basic. After that, it's mastering
Right.
and making sure that there's as little background noise as possible, compressing, EQing, making it sound full and good.
Yeah, cool. This was just a side note here for me to know more, because it's it's
Sure.
I don't have this opportunity to speak with experts and people in this area that often, so I'm using also this episode, and
Yeah.
I'm sure also that other people, other of the listeners might be interested in that.
Hmm.
But yeah, going back to the storyline. So you just said that now it's time to grow. It's time to become a CEO and not a freelancer. It's time to create a business, and this meant hiring, right? This meant also investing. And tell me what went through your mind in this process of investing and putting yourself into debt.
Hmm.
How were those days?
Terrifying, but also fulfilling because I finally was like, you know what, I'm at a poker table and I'm just pushing all my chips in. And if this doesn't work a year from now, then I'll just go bankrupt. It is what it is, you know. So with that mentality, I was afraid. It was
Yeah,
scary. I started quitting other hustles, even though I needed the money. It wasn't about money earned; it was time. If I
yeah.
really wanted this business to do what I hoped it would do, it needed not only a credit card, but it needed my time. So I was ramping up business debt because now I got a business checking account and a business credit card. So I had that. But then I'm also paying a third of my personal bills with a personal credit card.
How certain were you that the business would work out? Because I know that you already had your clients, right? So it was not a totally shot in the dark, right? So you're kind of already had an idea that there was a need for it.
Hmm.
So how certain were you that this would work out in a scale from 1 to 10, for instance?
It would be like 8, but
Right.
only because, and you mentioned it. You know, the first year and a half I was a freelancer. That was like a market test. So I realized that there was pain points and people needing producers to help them with their podcasting.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I just woke up one day and said, you know what, I'm going to be a podcast producer and start from scratch.
Exactly.
And, you know, it took a year and a half for me to be like, you know what, this can work.
I've been talking with a lot of people here in the podcast, and one thing most of them or all of them have in common is the passion. And I really believe now that the probably one of the most important things you need to have for your business is passion, because it will be such a hard journey. So many bad dreams, so many anxieties, stress, that if you're not passionate about it, I you won't make it. So what was your first hire, and how many people did you want to hire in the first place, and what was your first?
So my first technical hire was a lady by the name of Nicole to just help me with things, whatever it may be, as an assistant, but
Right.
an assistant that I could pay 2 hours a week for. After that, I hired an editor.
Mm.
His name is PJ. He's still with me. He still works some of the highest end stuff we do. And again, now I'm not only giving away hustles, now I'm giving away editing work.
How did it feel to lose control and give this, because it's a big responsibility, right? How did it feel to give to someone else?
When it came to the editing, wasn't a big problem. It was weird at first because you feel a little less connected to the client now. You get
Right.
someone else in the mix. But I was a very much a basic editor. You know, I knew enough to get around, and I hired a guy that was an editor, like someone that really knows what's going on. So I was able to let go of that ego quickly because I knew the product was getting better. The fear starts coming in where you're like, I need this person.
Yeah.
You know, now the real hard let go issue I had, which is down the timeline here, but when I incorporated task managers, that was next level to really give up that piece of the job.
What was the biggest challenge?
This is the area that was hard for me to let go because it's
Why?
very sensitive. It's just more sensitive. Their responsibility now is to make sure that the life cycle of an episode for a client is done well, done on time.
Yeah. What what have you learned from that process? What what are the tips that you would give for someone trying to let go and delegating to other managers?
Just be prepared to deal with mistakes, and it's okay. I would say the biggest thing I learned was going back to let's say a system. And I use a certain production management platform called Monday.com. There's Asana, there's Trello, and there's so many other
Mhm.
different platforms. So there's like the actual physical way of tasking people. But
Right.
you can also you set up a system like how does my company operate? You know, Trello and these other things are for any company. But how does my podcast agency run? I realized that the system was my system and it was good for me, but now I'm bringing other people in. It didn't make sense. It didn't work. That I was trying to force them into again what I thought was the company system. Like, hey, this is how we run it.
I really believe that when you start hiring or bringing other people to your project, it stops being your project and it becomes our project, right? And
Yes, absolutely.
you have to share the idea, you have to share the vision, and you have to mold it with with others, right? You have
Hmm.
to create together the new path, and it's interesting that
Absolutely.
you're validating that, and you felt the same in your business. So, if we just go one step back, you hired PJ, right? Your first editor. You had an assistant,
Hmm.
and how did it grow? Like, so you basically then you were able to say yes to more clients, and that brought more and more clients. Was that it? How did your clientele grew?
I'm simultaneously growing my business. I'm also needing people to offer services. So I hired a graphic designer that worked for me. But then now, if someone asks me, hey, can you do our cover art? Yes. Yes, we can. And that's how things just started snowballing.
Do you hire full time?
No, no, no. Everyone's freelancers, everyone's contractors.
Right. Doesn't it feel though that because they are freelancers that they cannot connect as much with the business and maybe not give 100%, or that's not the case?
Both. And yes. So when it comes to more of the technical people, the editors, the writers,
Hmm.
the graphic designers, they are hyper focused in that area. That's their passion. Freelancers, for the most part, are hungry. They want to work too. They want to build their own business in the sense of
Right.
themselves. When I hire an editor and I'm like, I'm going to be able to feed you at least 5 hours a week of work, boom, they love it. It saves them time from having to try to find their own clients when they work for an
Hmm.
agency that's just feeding them clients.
Right. Right.
With that said, let's go back to the managers. Now you're trying to not only ask someone to handle things, but are they invested? And I've had issues with that. And I finally just came to the conclusion I could be the best leader in the world, but at the end of the day, no one's going to care about my business more than me.
Can you change this though if you bring people as full-time employees and give them, let's say, stake in the
Hmm.
company or something? Can you also make this company a little bit theirs too?
Yes, there's definitely options you can do. I do have a gentleman on the team that would be that person.
Mm,
Um, and he's great. His name's Mondo. He was my graphic designer that I hired. He's a prime example of from word go. He was that guy that was like, I want to help you build this. I want to be a part of this. And
right.
he's been the cheerleader ever since. And now I give him all kinds of different work. And yes, he and I have talked. And at some point, I'd like to figure out a way to get them vested in it.
Gotcha. And so at this point, you are already killing off your debt, right? You
Trying. Yeah. I mean, I still add. Sometimes you just come up with like, you need some capital.
and how many clients do you have at the moment?
I mean, total around 40.
Wow. Okay.
But then there's a core of repeat, like more dedicated. So I would say 25 are there on a consistent basis, and others kind of just come and go as they want. But overall, I've touched, as I call, about 100 podcasts total.
So you use your own podcast, your YouTube channel, as a way to get more clients, or is it a different business?
It's its own thing, but I'm using it as a marketing tool. We are going to now become a content generating entity. Before, it was only taking in other people's content and producing it and doing our
Right.
thing and publishing and pushing it out to the world. We weren't doing our own. I'm a podcast producer. I should have a podcast. I should be able to walk the walk.
It's really interesting to see that you are really an entrepreneur, and you're always also coming up with other businesses and ways to grow, and it's really nice. Do you have a limit, like a place where you say, okay, now I'm happy, I have my business, I don't need any more side hustle, I will just continue, or do you think this will never happen?
And I hope someday I can wake up one day and be like, I'm out of debt, have a nice little house. I'm not looking to be, living up on the Hollywood Hills here. To have no debt would be nice. And I feel like if I was to continue to grow as a businessman after these two companies, it would be like, what's the easiest way to just invest some money into something?
Yeah.
You
already have your passion set up. Now let's just get a little bit extra with investments. Yeah, makes total sense. And the fact that you're also focusing on a niche, it's great for business and also for networking. So I think it makes total sense. I'm super excited also to hear how the next years will come, and probably we'll be able to speak again in the podcast about that. It was really a pleasure to have you here in the podcast.
Thank you, Tiago. And anytime I'll come back and we can talk again. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I will link Derrick's company and YouTube channel and podcast in the show notes, in the description of this episode, so you can just go and check it out. And if you need a little extra help setting up your podcast, Derrick is your man. So reach out to him. And this was another wannabe entrepreneur. See you tomorrow.